Well, that's it. No more Raptors regular season games. We're here. 82 games in the books. 59 wins. Raps decided tonight was the most important game of the regular season, despite absolutely nothing being on the line, and it actually being beneficial from a matchup standpoint to lose this game. But Dwayne Casey wanted 60 wins. I've said it before, it's a really nice benchmark. I can't hate completely on it, but you start to see Serge Ibaka get chopped in the face with an elbow. Start to see your sixth man go down with an injury. Your star players are already at 33 minutes in a season that's all been around keeping them healthy for the postseason. Left them out there for 5 minutes in overtime. Very confusing loss for the Toronto Raptors, as again, they fall to the Miami Heat in Miami, 116-109. This is Raptors postgame. Thanks for joining us. I'm JD Bunkis. He in the nicer looking suit than my just plaid shirt. Didn't get the memo. It's Donnovan Bennett.
Well, I mean, I look better than you no matter what I'm wearing.
Listen, I'm not disagreeing with that, but it's varying factors. Like, there's varying degrees. You could just toned it down a little bit for me.
You wanted 60.
Absolutely, I
wanted
wanted
60.
60.
You waxed poetically about how much 60 meant. You wanted a banner for 60. It matters to the perception of the franchise. We had the whole rest versus rust conversation. So they went for 60, and now you're not happy they went for 60.
I thought that the Raptors could have got 60 without playing the starters the way that they played them.
Well, evidently they couldn't because they couldn't get 60 with the starters.
But I never said that 60 was more important than getting out of here healthy. And I think I was on record saying that I never wanted them to be playing like this game like it was a playoff game. Or that it was a regular season game even.
Well, I just don't know how you half want 60. Either
what
want
do you
it or
mean,
don't.
how do you half want it? You want them to win always. You're hoping that they win the ball game, except for you don't want it to come at the expense of health. And this team has proven many times that you can rest DeMar DeRozan and win a basketball game, like they have done against bad teams. You can rest Serge Ibaka, like they did in the last game, and win a basketball game. You can rest Kyle Lowry and win a basketball game.
But
they don't have to be mutually exclusive.
But they couldn't tonight, though.
Why?
Because they lost playing their best players.
So what?
So they were trying to win.
Sure, but that doesn't exclude that I would want 60 wins and still want them to sit players. Like, you can still want multiple things, but know that one thing is more important than the other. Well, and tonight, this was clearly not an important matchup. Dwayne Casey, for, again, reasons that I hope he explains. We're going to catch up with either Eric Smith or Paul Jones from the locker room tonight. I don't know if people are going to hold Casey's feet to the fire, but the dude lost his sixth man tonight. I don't know how long.
You don't know he lost him.
Well, he lost him for the game. He lost him for the game. He could not return, and he looked like he got absolutely smoked. It's a smaller player, and he had to leave the game with a bruised shoulder and couldn't return. Serge Ibaka took an elbow to the face. I'm sure he's going to be fine. But there was a level of risk there.
There's 15 guys on the team. Really, there's 12, actually, that play. So if you didn't want him to play one of the guys who's 5 through 10, who did you want him to play? Like, I don't understand how you go for 60 wins, but you're not playing a guy who is on your bench to start the game. Like, who are you playing?
Again, I've wanted 60 wins all season. This is a nonsensical discussion because, of course, you want 60 wins.
Well, we had the conversation when there was one game left and they had nothing to improve upon.
But, of course, hope they win. Hope that you go out there and get a win. But don't play your starters 38 minutes. Don't play Kyle Lowry 38 minutes. Don't put them in situations against a highly be able to read the situation as well. Like, if they started that game and you try to get Lowry into a bit of a rhythm, I understand it. He's a rhythm shooter. You want to let him see a couple of buckets go in. Same thing for DeMar DeRozan. But when you're playing them late in a game, and there's a guy like Bam flying around out there, setting hard screens, and guys are scrapping for loose balls, and Miami's trying to win this game, and they're a physical basketball team that's got bad blood against you, read the room, coach. But take the players out.
Lowry was in a rhythm. He hit half his shots from 3, and he took 10 of them. He hit half his shots from the floor. And read the situation. It was a close ball game.
So take them out. That's what my point is. The risk isn't worth it.
We had this conversation about 60 wins relative to if you play them or not, and whether or not 60 mattered. So if health is important, if rest is important, then why did they play at all?
They shouldn't have.
I said they shouldn't have played, and you disagreed because you said you wanted a 60-win banner. So then he went hard for 60 wins, and you got upset.
I never said that I wanted this team to play their starters for 60 wins. I said 60 wins would be nice and it means something because it does. 60 wins has a meaning, but it doesn't come at the expense of playing your starters that many minutes. I'm sorry. And again, I don't think that it's mutually exclusive to have players rested in the second half or rely on your bench a little bit more and go deeper in that bench and play some of your deep cut guys. Again, they're playing 905 players the other night. You picked the wrong night. Pick them in this one. Chasing 60 wins felt very selfish tonight, especially the lengths that they went to try to get to 60 wins. Playing DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry for 5 minutes in overtime. Playing them late in a game where it was clearly getting physical and guys were taking some tough shots. Doesn't make any sense to me. 60 wins would have been nice. Of course it would have been nice. Putting up 60 wins is a real benchmark, a real high watermark. But watching the way that this game started to transpire, it started to make no sense. And again, I have no idea why some of their players were out there. I want to get to a couple of these tweets. I wanted to start off with this one because Ryan from Woodridge tweeted in, after complaining that Lowry cared more about Nova's championship than the Raptors regular season, I'm not going to complain that they played 100% tonight. It's like it's the playoffs. The difference there was that when Lowry played the Cavaliers, there was something at stake. They were hoping to not only try to assert themselves against the best team in the Eastern Conference, but they were also hoping to still lock up first place in the East. And they were very closely followed by the Boston Celtics at the time. So this game, the difference was, again, it was more beneficial for you to lose. There's no doubt in my mind that Miami Heat team is by far a tougher out than some of the other ones, and that the Bucks would be an easier out than the Wizards. But that's where the Raptors are right now. By the way, they play the Washington Wizards. We're late to getting that. We'll break down that matchup. We'll start discussing the Wizards in a little bit. But yeah, King Ryan tweets in, good thing Washington is trash. Dale Hamill, I think they wanted 60 pretty bad, and I think they benefit from a practice playoff game. You can see the players' faces after missing shots in OT. They've got time to rest before the playoffs start. That to me makes no sense. Like, it really doesn't. You should be expecting the Raptors to show up in the playoff game. They shouldn't need a warm-up playoff game before the final contest. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
But didn't you say that they needed more close games?
They
that
did.
The blowouts were a bad thing?
But that was months ago that I wanted them to have more close games.
It was a couple
because
weeks.
I wanted them to have some reps. And now, in the final game of the season, it doesn't make any sense. There was nothing on the line tonight, man. You're not going to change the complexion of your basketball team.
You're missing the point. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I have said for the last week, I would shut these guys down.
Mm-hmm.
To me, 60 wins does not matter. It would be great. Obviously, whoever you feel you want to play to win the game, as Herm Edwards would say. But to me, the rest and forget about even the rest, the chance and exposure for injury is a risk I'm not willing to take. So we agree. I agree actually to a higher degree than you, because I wanted to play these guys in the first place. Never mind not play them in the second half. For me, I just don't think you can be half pregnant. If you want to win the game and 60 wins matters, go win the game. And if you don't, then you shouldn't have played them in the first place.
Yeah, I think in this situation you could have been. I didn't really have a problem seeing the starters start this game. I had a real problem seeing the way that they finished them. And again, I thought they were going to come out at halftime. I really did. I was looking at this game and saying, okay, they all got their reps in. Everyone's done. You played a pretty close contest. Now take the starters out and don't expose them to injury for the rest of the game. They did it. And guess what? Somebody got hurt. And it's one of their most important 6 or 7 guys, depending on how you shake it. I like losing Fred VanVleet would be massive, especially in a matchup where they're going to be playing a Washington Wizards team that's got a lot of guard depth.
I mean, he closes games.
Yeah.
So more often than not, you could argue he's one of their most important 5 guys, even though he doesn't start the game.
So especially, again, if you play Washington in the first round, it's very likely that their crunch time minutes are going to comprise of a bit of a smaller look. I have maybe Gortat plays in those crunch time minutes, but I think that it's fairly likely that they give you a couple of looks at certain times where they also play 3-guard lineups with Satoransky, with John Wall, and with Bradley Beal. And if you lose having a very dynamic player in Fred VanVleet who has shot the ball well for you, has played really good defense like he did tonight for you, that'd be a monumental loss for the Toronto Raptors, who are, again, trying to finally get rid of the ghosts and try to beat up on some bad teams. Squire tweets in, have a little face, first place team and best in Raptors history should be the narrative. Sure, and that would have been the narrative tonight regardless of had they won or lost this basketball game. And that's why it's so strange that they decided to hunt 60. Brennan Delaney. Worst thing about tonight was that they didn't get to 60 wins. Bring on the Wizards, bring on the Cavs, bring on the 76ers. You're the best in the East for a reason, and your reward is home court advantage. Positivity, boys. Yeah, again, that's a tough one, man. Like, that's a tough one to me. If you look at that path, like we've joked about this before, but that's so Raptors. But finishing first in the Eastern Conference and having a path of what I believe to be the 3 toughest outs. Like, if you asked me to do a draft right now, hey, who could you pick to avoid in the NBA Eastern Conference? I'd pick Cavs 1, I'd pick Sixers 2, and I'd pick the Washington Wizards 3. Even though the Wizards have been terrible lately, again, I've made this point before, I really do believe that flipping a switch in the postseason is a real thing. And I just look at their top 7 guys compared to everybody else's, the fact that they have playoff experience, the fact that they have success in their past against the Toronto Raptors. Do you think that applies to those guys? Because, like, I've said this before, I think it applies to daily life, where if you've played any type of sport and you see somebody that you've had success against, or you remember having success against them, you kind of carry around that swagger for a really long time. Or even if you're in an office and you know you deal well with somebody, you always are able to, like, go back to that experience in kind of the same way. Like, did you have that when you were playing football? Like, you played CIS football. I wonder if you ever had teams or matchups that you just always felt like, you know what, I've beat them before. I feel like I'm going to have a good night tonight.
Yeah, the bad teams.
Right.
Because I wasn't good enough to have those matchups against good teams. I think if you're Washington, if you're part of their staff, their fan base, no question you feel confident given what happened there a couple years ago. The atrocity that was a series where they took the brooms out and embarrassed you, and Wale was calling out both Drake and Matt Devlin. And both of those guys.
Matt Devlin Wale beef is all the way back.
Yeah, both of those guys rolled deep with a heavy crew. But if you're the Raptors, and if we're talking about the Raptors psyche, aside from maybe Kyle, I don't think that's a factor. Most of the guys weren't on this team back then. And so, no, I don't think it's an issue for the Raptors. I don't think they're going to be afraid to go into the Verizon Center because of the past horrors. I mean, I think the real issue is this is a team that you split the season series with, 2-2. And if you asked a lot of NBA observers, okay, Wizards, Raptors, coming into this year, one of these teams is going to be ranked 1, one of them is going to be ranked 8. Which one is it going to be? I think more people would have said Washington was going to be ranked 1 and the Raptors were going to be ranked 8. Now, they would have been wrong to think the Raptors would have been ranked 8, but Washington came back with continuity and with proven all-stars. Toronto came back with an entirely different bench and with stars who people had questions about given how the season ended a year ago. So Washington is a dangerous team that's lurking. Their record is bad because they got off to a horrible start, and then one of their best players was hurt for a long stretch.
And they had drama.
And they had drama. You could also make the argument that they played their best basketball when that star was hurt. But, I mean, I remember John Wall jumping on the scores table and acting like he was the second coming of Michael Jordan. It was a bit premature because he then went on to play terrible and lose in a clinching game. But these are guys, Porter Jr., Beal, Wall, who all have had real moments in the playoffs. And so I think it's going to be a tough matchup. I wouldn't be surprised. I would be surprised if this series went anything less than 6.
So here's the positive spin. In the last 15 games, the Wizards have been brutal. I think that with this loss, they're 1-9 in their last 10. They've been really, really bad. If you look at their defensive rating in the last 15 games, they're 23rd in the NBA. Their net rating, they're 21st. Like this has not been a very good basketball team lately. The Raptors should definitely have the advantage on the glass, even when they go small. I do like the Raptors' front court depth a lot more than I like the Wizards' front court depth. The only thing that kind of changes that equation a little bit for me is that Marcin Gortat seems to find the fountain of youth and always seems to play well against Jonas Valanciunas. And when we're talking about guys where you said you were a little worried about Kyle Lowry getting some flashbacks, I would say that the two guys that I'm most worried about would be JV with Gortat because he struggled with him in the past, and DeMar DeRozan, who really struggled to get his shot off last time they played Otto Porter and has not had a ton of success against him. Otto Porter plays DeMar DeRozan very well. He got into DeMar DeRozan's head the last time they played. And yes, this team is very different, but I could absolutely see a script where the Toronto Raptors fall to some of the same pitfalls that they did in that series the last time around. So, yeah, Washington. Not the greatest team lately. I don't think that they're better than 8 guys deep. They've got Mike Scott is probably their 8th man, and then it's a cutoff at that line because I don't think they're going to be playing the likes of Jan Mahimi and Tim Frazier very many minutes in the postseason. But Bradley Beal, John Wall, Otto Porter, Kelly Oubre, Markieff Morris, Marcin Gortat, Thomas Satoransky, Mike Scott. It's not a bad group, especially considering this was the year that Bradley Beal, like he really established himself to me anyways as one of the premier guards in the NBA. But again, I think the Raptors should win this series, but I agree with you. I don't see this being just a walk in the park for the Toronto Raptors. Like I could see this going, 6 or 7 games, and it really does scare me. I can't wait for the update on Fred VanVleet because that's a massive, massive loss if they lose him from floor spacing, from late game ball control, from defense, everything. It's a huge miss.
This series will be interesting because it'll be telling who submits first as far as your rotation construction.
Mm-hmm.
The best 3 centers in this series are Raptors. Like they have the.
Are you counting Serge?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm counting it because he'll close games at the 5.
I was just curious if you were like disrespecting him to the point where you were throwing Lucas Nogueira.
Oh no. But the Wizards, like if we were doing position by position, the Wizards at the 3-4. I mean, over half of their rotation are guys who play the 3 and the 4. Their wings are their real strength, other than Wall, and. Now, for the 800th show in a row, we are bringing up that the 3 has been a bit of an Achilles heel for the Raptors. We've seen some positive signs in flashes. I would not say tonight was one of those nights, especially for C.J. Miles, who closed the game.
Well,
and so the likes of, Morris, if he plays, he'll play the 4. He'll move up to the 5. I don't think he can move down to the 3. But Oubre Jr., Beal, he starts at the 2, but he can get minutes at the 3. Satoransky, same thing. Meeks can come off the bench and get hot and give you some minutes. I think it's going to be really interesting because, again, after John Wall, Wizards don't have a lot in the backcourt as far as
Satoransky's pretty good.
But as far as someone who's going to dictate the pace of play as a point guard.
Yeah, but he was the guy that filled in for them when he was out.
But assuming Fred is healthy, I like the Raptors point guard depth much more than I do the Wizards.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I was actually going to say to you that I think a big X factor in this series is going to be DeLon Wright. Like if you just look at what their lineup is, DeLon Wright can guard Kelly Oubre Jr. He can give you a couple of minutes on Otto Porter. He can give you minutes on Thomas Satoransky. He's definitely going to play defense on John Wall. So there's a whole bunch of guys and Bradley Beal, the same thing. Like I've said multiple times, I think that DeLon Wright is the Raptors' best perimeter defender. And if you're looking at it from that vantage point, I would like to see him play some pretty heavy minutes on Bradley Beal. The interesting question is going to be when we're talking about the Raptors' wing depth is that, again, this is the series that it seems like Norm Powell would be able to assert himself a little bit. That if there's a bit of a problem with C.J. Miles, if he continues to struggle through his three-point shot and you start to stagger those threes, maybe you start looking at more minutes for Norm Powell because there's just more players that he can defend in this series. This isn't the Bucks where these guys are longer and give him size and can just shoot over top of him. This isn't the Cavs where they present you with LeBron James. Like, because let's be real here, Norm Powell ain't guarding LeBron James. Not that anybody can really do it effectively, but there's just too much size and strength being given up in that matchup. This isn't even the Sixers where you'd be asking him to defend a guy like Ben Simmons and he's giving up too much size. This is the one matchup that I would say that the Raptors could have had in the first round, outside of maybe Miami, where Norm Powell could end up being playoff Norm Powell.
Well, it's funny you say that because remember when the Raptors drafted Norm Powell?
Mm-hmm.
It was summer right on the heels of losing to the Wizards in the playoffs, being embarrassed, and having no guys who really had any sort of intensity as far as guarding the perimeter. And in a way, I felt like that was a bit of an answer to that series, that the Gravis Vasquez's of the world, as good as they are offensively, they're not going to help this team get to where they need to go to in a playoff series like that. Now, little did we know Gravis Vasquez wasn't going to have another meaningful moment in the NBA period.
Mm.
But
poor Gravis.
Yeah, poor sip out. But yeah, Norm is drafted off the heels of that series, comes
Mhm.
full circle where that's still a bit of a void in the Raptors rotation, and this is a big spot where Norm can really assert himself and fill it.
Yeah, I'm actually going to say I'm going to make a bold prediction right now that Norm Powell actually plays some effective minutes in this series. That Raptors fans, there's going to be a discussion at some point in this series, 3 or 4, where Raptors fans are saying playoff Norm is back, and there's going to be a little bit of a Twitter moment where everyone's discussing how Norm Powell is back. So looking at some of the numbers, Washington is a little bit of the bizarro Toronto Raptors where they don't take a lot of threes, but they make the threes they take. So I could see that being a very frustrating narrative in this series, that Toronto's volume could be very high and Washington's could be a bit lower, but you're going to see guys like Oubre, like Beal, like Porter Jr., and Morris knocking down those shots while the Raptors could miss theirs. Like they're 23rd in 3-point attempts, but 4th in 3-point percentage, which is like that's almost polar opposite from where the Raptors are. The Raptors are one of the teams where they attempt most of the threes, I think third most, and make something around the 23rd in percentage.
Well, Beal is a great 3-point shooter. Mm-hmm. He's able to get his shot off over people when contested because he has such a high release. Otto Porter Jr. has made himself a prototypical big 3-and-D type of guy, killing you from corner threes. But a lot of their 3-point shots come from penetration from John Wall. Him turning the half court into a full court fast break and compromising the defense. And to circle back to one of your points, that's why the value of a Norman Powell, but I also think DeLon Wright is huge, because if you can put DeLon Wright on John Wall for 15, 20 minutes a night and just go harass him, move your feet, use your length, and make him pick his dribble up a step, 2 steps early, make him jump to pass instead of sucking in the defense, making the defense rotate, getting that help, and then kicking it to wide open 3-point shots. I think that changes the equation of the Washington offense and those 3-point shots. And we've talked about this before. The best 3-point defense, it's not a 3-point contest. It's a 3-point deterrence. And I will live with Morris taking a contested 3-point shot, with Oubre Jr. and Otto Porter Jr. taking a contested 3-point shot. But what you don't want is the wide open 3-point shots that are just backbreakers, especially in a playoff series, especially in their building where it energizes the crowd. And you all of a sudden, they hit a couple and they've gone on a quick run.
Well, yeah, listen to this in terms of 3-point percentage. Bradley Beal, 38%. John Wall, surprisingly, on 4 attempts a game this season, is shooting 37%. It's a great year for him. Otto Porter Jr., who has always been kind of this great wide open 3-point shooter. Don't leave him, 44%. Kelly Oubre, 34%. Markieff Morris, 36%. Thomas Satoransky, again, on very small sample size, but he shoots it at 47%. Mike Scott, 2 a game, 40%. Like, they have a bunch of guys that you cannot leave open. And that's why I'm curious if this is the series where you do what I've been preaching for a while, which is this is where you break the I'm going to switch up the starters if things don't work after game 1, or I'm going to be very quick to my bench after starting OG Anunoby and quickly move to DeLon Wright in the lineup so that we can guard the 3-point line. And part of it, what you said, if you want to keep John Wall from being his effective self, why not slap DeLon Wright on he or Bradley Beal early in that series and try to take one of them away with DeLon's length and quickness on defense? Because to me, he fits in with those Raptors starters a lot more than OG Anunoby does. Like, we were mentioning it when we were watching the game tonight. OG still has a really bad habit of trying to cheat on defense. And he gets burned a lot of the times on quick backdoor screens. And when guys catch the ball with a full steam of momentum, he can get left in the dust. And he hasn't become very good enough yet at recovering and blocking shots, or even jumping those passing lanes and stealing it. So this is a series where I don't see OG Anunoby being a huge factor. Like, I actually see his game not really matching up here, that he's going to have some minutes against Otto Porter. But Otto Porter is actually someone who I see, that's DeMar DeRozan's check. You want DeMar DeRozan facing Otto Porter and standing out on the 3-point line. What you don't want is DeMar DeRozan chasing Bradley Beal around a bunch of screens.
Yeah, I mean, I think OG can guard
Beal?
Otto Porter Jr.
Right, but that means DeMar's on Beal.
I think you need to tell OG, you can't cheat. You can't cheat. You can't cheat 500 times. And I think Washington will play long stretches small, and Oubre Jr. will be in the game, and I think that's someone that DeMar may end up checking for large stretches. The chess match in this series will be interesting as we look at the series as a whole. You know, the Raptors get the Wizards, Celtics get the Bucks. Somehow the Pacers have after a great year, their reward is getting LeBron and the Cavs. Like, that's so Pacers as well.
Yeah, but that's actually what it deserves, because again, if we did a power rankings of the teams, that who's actually right now the favorite in the East, it's the Cavs, and who's the team that you'd most like to face, it's the Pacers. Like, in a weird way, that actually worked out.
Right. I'm just saying it's a cruel world that the Pacers and the Raptors played above their actual expectations, and what they got was super hard matchups. And the Bucks lived up to no expectations, got their coach fired, and still didn't respond, and they get gifted an opportunity to play the Celtics in the first round.
Yeah. It's
a cold world.
It is very cold. And now, again, we await the word of... I'm like frantically refreshing Twitter because I keep hoping that there's just somebody that's going to tell me that Fred VanVleet is completely fine. Hey, but at least it was reported today that Lorenzo Brown is signed for the rest of the season. So,
hey, G League MVP.
Yeah.
Let's go, Lorenzo.
Who is going to...
Guess what? It's your time to shine.
But yeah, man, Fred VanVleet getting hurt. 1:32 left in the ball game. Like, that to me is so Raptors. And for a guy who's had such an incredible season, you really hope that it's nothing too serious and that he's ready to go for game one. By the way, Wizards Raptors. Does this series make it a little bit more intriguing? Like, if you were a schedule maker and you had to put the Raptors, if you were considering putting the Raptors not in a day game, was there any matchup? I think that the Heat were the least sexy matchup from trying to sell it to a national audience standpoint, right? Because there's no other star on Miami. Either way, the Raptors have played all three of these teams in the postseason, so you'll have that angle with every one of those teams. But I think that the Bucks, the rematch of where are these two teams now a year later, would have gotten the Raptors over the hump of the 12 o'clock games. I don't think the Wizards do that.
I don't know if the rematch would have much to do with it. I think it would all be the Giannis factor.
Yeah, totally. That's a big part of it.
But as you mentioned, they played these three teams before. They've all been NBA TV classics. They've all been 12:30 classics, although apparently they're going away from the 12:30 start.
Okay, when you said NBA TV classics, I didn't realize that you meant put them in the afternoon games. I thought you meant like they've all been excellent basketball games.
No.
I was I wouldn't watch any of those series ever again if you paid me.
No.
Like, those were all rock fights.
We know the Cavs, wherever LeBron finishes and whoever they play, they're going to be ESPN TNT all the way. We get that.
Sixers.
I almost feel like the Sixers
are
at that status. Although
you don't win 16 games in a row, have the rookie of the year, and have Joel Embiid and get bumped to the noon games.
True, but they're playing a team that's not sexy in the Heat. And do you change the equation on them knowing that Joel Embiid is not going to start the series?
Wait, I thought that it's Sixers Bucks.
No.
It's Sixers Heat? Heat stayed in the 6 hole?
Celtics Bucks. I mean, I could be wrong because I'm not good at math.
I thought it was it's Heat Sixers. Okay, my bad. I thought that if all things stayed according to plan where everybody lost. By the way, what disrespect to the Toronto Raptors that the Washington Wizards just sat John Wall, sat Otto Porter, lost to the Orlando Magic, decided not even to really try in that game, lost them by 10 points. And again, that's a Magic team that we just saw playing four dudes that you and I never heard of before. And somehow the Wizards disrespectfully lost that game.
Well,
you saw the Heat try. The Heat wanted out of that matchup.
He's the only team that tried.
But yeah, the Cavs just decided like, no, we don't care.
Everyone wanted the Raptors.
Yes.
The Bucks wanted the Raptors. The Cavs wanted the Raptors.
It's like throwing their hands up. The Bucks, by the way, for those of you that didn't pay attention tonight, I'm sure you did. If you're watching Raptors post game, you definitely were paying attention to the Bucks game. But the Bucks gave up 46 points in the first quarter, and I think at halftime they had given up 74 or 76 points. Just an all-time embarrassing performance. And if the Raptors ever get a hold of them again, like there's got to be some straight-up revenge for that. Let's talk about a couple of things that we liked from this game, because I mean, there wasn't much to like considering neither of us wanted to see the starters, especially in the second half of that game. But I did really like that. As much as I chirped OG for cheating a couple of times, most notably early against Tyler Johnson for a quick dunk. And then there was another one that happened later in the first quarter where just OG Anunoby allowed a couple of buckets right at the rim. He does look a lot more confident in the three-point shooting. Like the three-point shooting for OG Anunoby, he caught one right away early in the ball game on a loose ball that came to him in the corner. He had a little bit of space, and he pulled the trigger, and the shot looked good, and he finished the game 2 of 3. And I've said this before, but I'll say it again. No matter what the series is, no matter what the opponent is, if OG Anunoby knocks down half of his three-point shots in the postseason, you're laughing. Like, you're at least getting something from him, because I think if he's not making those shots, if he's missing the wide open threes, because he's going to get left by every single team. If he's missing those shots, it's really going to change the way that that starting unit can operate and how many minutes you're even going to be able to get out of him.
Yeah, that's a good point. I had 2 things I really liked. We saw good Kyle.
Good Kyle, and Kyle from the mid-range, which is always a really nice sign to see, right? When he's dribbling into traffic and he creates that little bit of space and pulls back from about 20 feet. I like that move.
Yeah, he was 50% from 3, which is a good sign in a different way from OG, because Kyle, a third of his threes are going to be heat check threes. So if he's hitting half of them, period, that's a real good side. 28, 10, and 9 on the night for Lowry. The other good thing I liked was their interior defense, especially on Whiteside. 10 points, 5 of 16, whether it was JV, whether it was Serge getting his face knocked in, whether it was Pirtle. Didn't foul, didn't bail him out. Not that he's a great foul shooter. Good verticality, made him catch the ball away from the basket. I thought protecting the paint was a real good sign. Now, it won't be much of a factor in the Wizards series because Marcin Gortat is literally catching the ball to pass it to somebody else.
Yeah, except for, again, that I'm still living in fear. I'll have the flashbacks of the John Wall, Marcin Gortat pick and roll with JV. It's nice to know that the Raptors do have Serge Ibaka and that they do have Jakob Poeltl, because if that matchup continues to not work out, that at least you have another lever to pull.
Anyone who has a terrible Jumpman tattoo on their calf, I'm not worried about.
See, it's funny, too, that
it's just a rule I have in life.
Things you're not worried about. If it was a Miami series, I was thinking that entire game of how I'm just really not worried about Hassan Whiteside. He put up all those stats, but he's like Russell Westbrook light of centers, where I just trust that guy to go stat chasing and do some really selfish things and cause some problems with his teammates. At least Russell Westbrook, though, can take over a ball game, and I don't get that sense from Hassan Whiteside. Like, when I watch him, I'm like, why is this guy getting paid so much? All right, he's a decent shot blocker, but what were you more afraid of, when they went to the Oubre Bam look or when they had Hassan Whiteside in there? Like, to me, it's very obvious that he's their, like, he's got utility, but that he's not this terrifying player. If you played the Heat in a matchup, the thing you're most afraid of when it comes to Hassan Whiteside is that he's going to push somebody in the back into the stanchion or into the crowd.
Yeah, I don't think the money spent was wise. I think it was so unwise that Dwayne Wade was like, really? You're going to pay him? You're not going to pay me? Like, peace. I'm out of here until I have no choice but to come back. But I just think it's about supply and demand. There are not that many people who are 7 feet tall that can wake out of bed and get you a double-double and block 3 shots a game. And he happens to be one of them. And so
it's funny on Twitter, at least.
Yeah. And so based on that and that alone, his agent was able to get him some money that we all knew at the time was going to be bad money, because if he's your best player, what are you winning? The saving grace is that they have a great coach who has some standing and doesn't feel forced to play him in big spots. And that, he might be their best player, but their real strength is that player 2 to 10 doesn't have the upside that he does, but are really, really good and smart basketball players.
See, I didn't think they had their best player tonight.
Sorry. You're correct. Their best player is Goran.
Yeah, their best player is Goran, and the Raptors still ended up losing to them despite trying. Other really big positive sign, 16 points for Jakob Poeltl, 12 rebounds, played 29 minutes tonight, and all of them really good. Like, the decision for them to put Kelly Oubre in that game, or sorry, not Kelly Oubre, Kelly Olynyk in that game, was punished by Jakob Poeltl. And again, if you're looking at that Wizards matchup and saying, okay, there are times where they're going to have to go a little bit smaller. They're going to go with a bit of a stretchier lineup. I think one of the things that you're very comforted by is that, remember there was a little stretch about a week and a half ago where Jakob Poeltl was struggling a little bit, and they were giving some minutes to Lucas Nogueira. He was getting into foul trouble early, wasn't looking quite like himself. Lately, dude's on fire, right? He's scoring everything. He's not missing any shots. And in a matchup against Washington, where, again, they don't have a really deep front court, I think that you're going to be able to see some really good minutes from Jakob Poeltl. And if he continues to play this way, I think he'll really exploit them.
Yeah, and he was on the court when the game mattered at the end. I mean, we talk about why was Kyle on the floor, why was DeMar on the floor. When Casey really wanted to win, Jakob Poeltl was on the floor.
Yeah, Eric Smith, radio voice of the Raptors, joins us now. What's up, Eric? How you doing, man?
Hey, guys.
So I guess we got to start with the post game conversation with Dwayne Casey and the decision to play his starters deep into that ball game when it started to get into a physical game late, and then especially in overtime when you started pushing Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan's minutes up to 38. I think they finished at.
Yep.
So I'm curious as to what the conversation was like with Dwayne Casey and what his explanation was for playing those guys tonight.
I basically, in not so many words, JD said that if anybody has a problem or doesn't understand what the Raptors were trying to do, then they basically don't know basketball. He said that it was extremely important to try and go in that pursuit of 60 wins and to finish out the season on a high note, on a winning note, competing right down to the end as they've done for every game. And he was trying to win the game, period. And he felt that, and he said this, in the couple of days leading up to, the potential for 60, saying that, there are a few times in franchise's history where they have the chance to have this sort of benchmark or this sort of win total, and they fully anticipated going for it. And, I think, in a perfect world, he probably would have liked to have seen this game closed out, mid-fourth and not had to worry about it and roll the bench out there. But he proved, I guess, the way that he was rolling them out there, that he, let alone they, the team, absolutely wanted. And Lowry kind of said the same thing as well. He said, listen, we tried to get it. We wanted to get it. DeMar DeRozan said it was important to us as well. We fell short, but you know what? It's already in the rearview mirror, and it's time to wipe the slate clean and gear up for the playoffs now.
So I guess the question is, Eric, do you know basketball? Because I was of the belief that I wouldn't even play these guys. I would have rested them, and I said the playoffs are more important. JD felt that you could do both. You could play them, but also rear it back and not put them in danger. You mentioned to us that you would probably play them in the first half and sat them down. As the game unfolded, did your perception change on how you had handled your stars?
A little bit, because I felt that when they checked out, I want to say was it late third and then even into the fourth. I mean, you had a 7-point lead going into the fourth quarter. I thought that probably would have been it. When it got close down the stretch, I was wondering what Casey might do, and I was kind of thinking, all right, we're going to find out right now. When he went back to them, honestly, guys, I don't know that I have a major issue with it, because really, what are we talking about right now? Yes, we can talk about the ifs and buts of if somebody got hurt. And listen, Van Vliet, and I don't have an update for you. I asked. There is no update other than bruised shoulder. That's all I know right now. I tried to find out more, but there isn't anything being provided right now. But other than Van Vliet, and I'm obviously talking more about the stars, the main guys, and DeRozan and Lowry, Valanciunas, et cetera, they didn't get hurt. So what are we talking about? We're talking about them logging 38, 39 minutes, and they're not playing another game until probably at least Saturday, and from what I'm hearing, rumblings about Sunday maybe being game one. I don't really have a problem with it, to be honest with you. Now, listen, the devil's advocate to that is, if one of those guys went down with an injury, then you'd have some serious egg in your face. But at this point, dealing with what we saw and what unfolded, I honestly don't know that I have a real issue with it. And I just talked to both of them. Neither one of them looked like they were completely gassed and head hanging and exhausted and whatever else. I'll tell you what's going to be more of an issue is the bus doesn't leave for another 20 minutes or so here in Miami. By the time they get to the airport, check through security, this flight's not taking off till damn near 1:45, and it's an almost 3-hour flight. They're not going to land till almost 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. That's when they're landing, let alone getting to their homes at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. So that's why there's going to be no practice tomorrow. I'm sure the gym's open for any guy that wants to come get some shots up or anything, but the flight and the grind of getting in at 4:30 in the morning is going to be worse than the actual 38 minutes they played in the game tonight.
So we've talked about the matchups before, and you've made the point, and I've seen you on the pregame talking with Paul about it too, just how, listen, you're the 1 seed. You're supposed to be able to take care of business and not overly worry about your opponent. But is there anything in that matchup against the Wizards that you're looking at right away? As soon as you heard that come through, that first came to mind for you?
The first thing that comes to mind is I don't know what team Washington is and what team will show up on any given night. You could probably sell. I honestly don't see the Raptors getting swept again like they did 3 years ago. But you could sell me on Washington winning the series and pulling the upset. You could sell me on Toronto sweeping Washington, because they have been so erratic now for the better part of 3 weeks, if not the entire season. When you think about how up and down they were, how good they looked without Wall, how bad they looked with Wall, didn't come back. And then I saw somebody even tweet something to the effect of, just when we thought the Wizards had turned themselves around by, getting the win yesterday, they Wizards themselves by losing this one tonight to Orlando. Now, were they trying to lose? I don't know. I mean, they had it cut to 1 point. They tied the game on the third, and it was a nip and tuck game in the fourth quarter. And they actually, as you say, and they were up before they ultimately collapsed again in crunch time and lost the game. So, to me, is that trying to lose the game if you're nipping and tucking and back and forth before you ultimately just collapse again? And that's, to me, what makes them scary. There is no doubt there's a lot of talent with that backcourt, especially with Beal and Wall. You've got the wing guys in the front court of, the likes of Porter and then Oubre that have, caused issues to DeRozan in the past. I'm not sure how scared I am of Gortat, 3 years removed from that last series. I think Valanciunas, let alone Poeltl, Siakam should be able to. I heard you guys talking a little bit about the bigs going into the, before you brought me on. I think there's a lot of reasons to think that Toronto matches up very well against this team. But yet at the same time, like I say, because of how erratic they've been, that makes them kind of scary because you just don't know what team is showing up on any given night. And that to me is scary when you ultimately don't necessarily know what you're getting from your opponent. That's ultimately what jumped to my gut. But I will stand by, if we go man for man, pound for pound against this team, I think Toronto is a better team. They've proven to be a better team. And listen, as the number one seed, you have to respect your opponent, no doubt. And you guys know me. I know you don't necessarily agree. I don't care if you win at 4, if you win at 7, but you have to win. I'm not going to sit here and talk to you guys going into round 2 and say, ooh, they barely got by Washington. If they win the series, I don't care if they win at the buzzer and move on to the second round. Just for the same point, I don't care if they lose at the buzzer. You have to win the first round. No matter who the opponent was going to be, Milwaukee, Miami, or Washington, you have to win that first round. And the crazy thing now is, of course, having to deal with LeBron James in round 2 if you even get through round 1. And that's supposed to be the prize you get for being the number 1 seed.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody could have anticipated Philadelphia ripping off 16 wins to punch Cleveland down to that third slot. Nobody foresaw that coming. I mean, hell, even if they'd gone 14-2 or 13-3, hell, 10-5 would be an incredible run. But that's bad math. 11-5, 10-6, whatever. But 16 in a row, I mean, come on, that's just a punch to the gut for the Raptors having to think about LeBron in round 2. But, hey, you're eventually going to have to beat them, whether it's in round 2 or in the conference finals. You assume you got to beat them. So I guess bring it on if you're the Raptors.
Yeah, and part of that stretch without Joel Embiid, when he went down, I thought to myself, okay, like this, at least lose one of those games. You ever do that thing where you don't have any food in the house, but you go to the cupboard and you still look in the cupboard even though you know there's nothing there? Like, I've done that with the 76ers schedule, like probably 5 or 6 times, where I know that they've won all those games in a row, but I still go look at it and pour over the games that they've won and the strength of schedule and just still shake my head and can't believe it. So I know that you just said that you could see anything happening in this series. But before we let you go, I know you got to run. Do the Raptors break the streak? Do they win game 1?
I'm going to say yes.
Oh.
I'm going to say yes. I think they go out and win. I think they not only win game 1, I think they're going to win the series. I don't know how many games. I don't really care how many games, but I think they win game 1, and I think they win the series.
All right.
And I'll be the first to admit, as I always say, I'll be first to admit if I'm wrong on both counts. But I think they win game 1. I think they win the series. Now, round 2, man, oh man, like I said to you the other night, until I see LeBron James beat, I can't bet against LeBron James. So we'll see. We'll see.
I'm going to stay out of the building for the first game this time. I feel like I might be bad luck. So they have that going for them. Hey, Eric, thanks for joining us tonight, man. We always appreciate it.
Okay.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Eric Smith, radio voice of the Raptors, sidelines for Sportsnet when it's on television. Yeah, I just don't know, man. I just don't know. I agree. I think that, here's what I'll say. I think the Raptors have a pretty sizable advantage in the front court. Like, I really do. You mentioned that they have 3 centers potentially better than Gortat if you include Serge Ibaka. And as streaky as Markieff Morris is, and he's just one of those tough players who can knock down shots and play defense and just does a whole bunch of things for you when he's hot. Those 2 guys, that doesn't scare me enough. And especially with Jones coming off the bench. Like, that's not – or sorry, Mike Scott. I always call him Mike Jones. Mike Scott coming off the bench. Yeah, Mike Jones.
Mike Jones.
I don't trust that front court against what the Raptors have. Like, I really like Pascal Siakam, Serge Ibaka, Jonas Valanciunas, Jakob Poeltl. That to me is just it's a major mismatch for those teams. I think the real question in this series is going to be that Washington's going to they're going to go small. They're going to go small a lot, and they're going to test you by putting in lineups where they, I think, try Morris at the 5 or maybe even Porter at the 5 and just decide, you know what, we're going to space it out. We're going to move the ball around, and we're going to hope to get one of those guys who I mentioned earlier in the show who are all really good knockdown shooters on small volumes, wide open, those opportunities. And can the Raptors match it?
I'm looking forward to this playoffs because I do think that the Raptors' struggles in the postseason is a bit overstated. Like, name me the team in the East other than the Cavs that have been appreciably better in the playoffs over the last 4 years than the Raptors. There isn't one. The Celtics are kind of close, but the Celtics almost lost to the Bulls in round 1. And if Rajon Rondo doesn't get hurt, they probably do. Having said that, I think this playoffs is going to be awesome because there are two teams who have been the Raptors during this stretch: the Washington Wizards and the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Mm-hmm.
The path is now set that they can beat up those bullies, those teams where their stars were better than the Raptors' stars, and essentially get to an Eastern Conference final against the weaker side of the bracket, if we're being honest. We'll see what Philly is like by that time if they're still playing. And then potentially get to an NBA Finals. I'm excited because if the Raptors do get that far, they will truly have earned it. And I think they'll have earned not just the respect of Canadian basketball fans, but I think they'll earn the greater respect, certainly if they beat the Cavs, of the NBA community.
If they made it to the finals this year, it would be the ultimate slaying of every single demon the Raptors have ever had, right?
But even if they made
Washington.
it to the Eastern Conference Finals,
No, but
if they beat the Cavs.
I know, but the Sixers still have the Vince Carter graduation game on you.
Well,
That's what. Hey, listen, I'm just telling you that it's the ultimate demon chase. You beat Washington, who gutted your first iteration of We the North. Because remember, We the North losing to the Brooklyn Nets was no big deal, but losing to Washington was a real crisis. That's probably the first time everyone started talking about firing Dwayne Casey. Remember that post-game presser where they asked Lowry about Dwayne Casey's job security and he wouldn't go out on a limb for him? He was held it back. And people were talking about what the future of Kyle Lowry is.
It was the first time they were expected to win.
Exactly. You got swept and it was ugly and it was, you know what? I'll say it. I think that was the worst. That was the worst moment in franchise history. Like, that's the lowest of the low.
I could show you some Rafael Araujo.
Sure, I guess that's a bad one too. But I mean, in terms of like expectations to what you ended up getting, I think that's even worse than the Cavs last year, considering Kyle Lowry was hurt. But then you go get to face the Cavs, who've knocked you out in back-to-back years and who you took to an Eastern Conference final but couldn't slay the dragon. You go and you finally beat LeBron James and you unseat him from 7 straight conference championships. Then you go to Philadelphia and Vince Carter shows up and he's tipping the cap. He's got his graduation cap on, and you go and you beat the Sixers and you go to the finals. That to me that'd be quite some run. That's the storybook run.
It's the spring of Raptors redemption, my friend.
Yeah, that would be.
The Canadian basketball fans are not just going to get the Raptors in the playoffs. They're also going to get a Canadian in the playoffs for the first time, and Andrew Wiggins. The loser leaves town match between the Timberwolves and the Nuggets went the way of the Timberwolves. They end their playoff streak.
I'm crushed.
That you're not getting the Nuggets and Jokic in the playoffs?
I like the Nuggets a lot more, and I thought that the play stylistically, I wanted to watch Jamal Murray flourish in that series. I think that, my opinion on Andrew Wiggins. Like, I've made it known very many times. I don't think he's very good. In fact, I think he's quite bad.
Can you say very many?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Very many times.
But doesn't the very and the many cancel each other out?
I don't think they cancel each other.
Is there a degree of many-manys?
No, they amplify each other. They amplify each other.
If you say so.
Zach,
if you're an English teacher, please, 1-888-666-0590. Set us straight.
I won't pick up. No one's going to pick up that phone. The respect is needed against Washington, but if you shut down Ball, Oubre, and Porter, I think that meant to be Wall or Beal, and let Wall be Wall, you win. Wall is going to be
for Ball or from Wall and Beal.
No, because Wall came up later. Wall is going to do some crazy things without the other success. You win. I will say this: one win in terms of, I don't agree with Eric Smith that style points don't matter in this series. I think if you're the Raptors, you lose game 1 and you take the Washington Wizards to 7 games and it's a slugfest, and you don't. That the cultural reset reverts, that it matters, and that's not a positive sign. You want to show that all of this actually in the regular season meant something, and that you can take that even further. Stylistically, though, I actually think it's good for the Raptors because, again, the Washington Wizards play a move the ball style of basketball. They're one of the highest teams in assist percentage. They move the ball. I think they're third in assist percentage, 63% of their baskets. The Raptors are 11th with 59. So I think it's going to be two teams that can score the basketball. There's going to be some stretches where neither team plays defense. And I think the Raptors have the defensive advantage in this one. But move the ball and shoot open shots. And can the Raptors, poor shooters and multiple volume, outscore Washington's pretty good shooters with their smaller volume stats?
I don't think style points matter at all. There will be no points for artistic impression in the playoffs. The Boston Celtics, when they went on a run to win a championship, it took them 7 games to get out of the first round against the Atlanta Hawks. Nobody remembers. Nobody cares. They hung a banner. The 2 years ago, everything was so tough. But when the Raptors, one, got to the Eastern Conference Finals, and then two, took 2 games off the Cavs, nobody cared.
So if DeRozan starts chucking up long twos and they don't play any defense and they don't move the basketball and it goes to 7 games and it's a miracle, that you don't think that it's going to matter at all?
It is a results-oriented business. And just like the Maple Leafs could win 5-0 or 2-1, people are going to be ecstatic that they win. And if the Raptors secure 4 wins before they lose 4 in any given series, people are going to be ecstatic that they won.
By the way, what is your prediction for the series? Let's start to get to predictions. I'm going to say that the MVP of this series is going to be Kyle Lowry. I think that Lowry is going to carry the Raptors over the hump, that he's getting hot at the right time, and that he is actually going to exercise demons in a big-time way. I still think DeRozan's going to struggle against some of these looks, but I got the Raptors in 6 games.
I have the Raptors in 5, gentleman's sweep. And I think DeRozan is going to be the guy to carry the team. I think this entire year has been #proven. He's most likely going to be all NBA. You're started with him complaining about where he's ranked in various websites and magazines. Middle of the year, he has not only a breakthrough of being player of the week virtually every week, also off the court is inspiring people with his ability to relate to others who have mental health issues. I think this is going to be the continuation of what has been the best professional year in his career. And I think he's the guy who has a big playoff series in the first round.
Does OG Anunoby finish this series as the starting 3?
Yes.
Is Serge Ibaka going to be the Raptors' third best player, third most important player in the series?
Well, I think he's probably in a dentist chair right now. I don't know. I don't think he'll be the third best player.
Were you a little rattled in terms of Serge Ibaka's toughness level when he took an elbow to the face and had a loose tooth and could not check back into that ballgame?
Hey, you got to protect the pearly whites. Serge has a modeling career, my friend. I don't know if you've seen Mafuzi on IG, but my guy is wearing some tight denim jeans and some Chelsea boots and some fedoras, and he looks good doing it. And he's not going to play basketball forever. His teeth are an investment.
I think he can afford to get some more. I did think, listen, I was glad that he came out of the ball game because I wanted everybody at that point of the ball game, but I did think it was kind of funny that he took a elbow to the mouth. He was totally fine, but that he checked him out. It's like, you're not going to re-aggravate that, coach. Like he's going to be fine. By the way, I really need to listen to Dwayne Casey's post game because that would be all super disappointing if he used the words, if you don't know what we were doing or the meaning of what we did, then you don't know basketball.
Wait, you think Eric's a liar?
Well, he said he paraphrased him, and I just think that that's really first of all, it's just off-brand from that head coach, and I think that he was probably frustrated in himself. I'm dead serious. I think Dwayne Casey cost himself Coach of the Year tonight. That it's gone. That he kind of needed 60 wins to get certain people's attention because it is a benchmark that matters. And 2, if Fred VanVleet is seriously hurt, that's going to be a story, man. That's going to be a thing. This isn't going anywhere. We don't have an update on Fred VanVleet, and I don't think that's a very good thing. Normally when it's fine and a player's okay, you hear right away, hey, he's good, he's fine, it's all right. And I'm not going to go into what some of the people that were, sending me some tweets about in terms of the look of it and some screen grabs, but I think that's a really bad look if you lose your 6th man for a series or even a game because of this. I really do.
Well, is he the 6th man or is Siakam the 6th man or is DeLon Wright the 6th man? 6th man is kind of fluid, and listen.
He's going to get 6 man votes, Fred, ahead of everyone. He was consistently from start to finish their most important 6th man of the year.
Hey,
you
listen,
mentioned he was the guy that finished
I love
in crunch
Fred.
time.
Bet on yourself. I'll bet on Fred.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I agree that I wouldn't have put these guys in high leverage situations, given that the real high leverage situations are in the playoffs, and I'll save them for that. But the Fred injury, if you weren't playing him at the end of the game, who are you playing? Like he wasn't a starter. It's not like Kyle got hurt or DeMar got hurt or JV got hurt. He's one of your support players. He would have been playing. If anything, if Kyle and DeMar were sitting, he would have played more.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if Dwayne Casey's going to lose any sleep if Fred VanVleet is hurt seriously, because even if he didn't take the game serious, Fred VanVleet probably would have been on the floor in that spot anyways. I will say that he probably lost some votes because as many of the national writers that do a great job and cover the entire league, there's a bunch that look at box scores and look at stats and look at what's trending on Twitter and do their homework and say, oh my goodness, I've only seen the Raptors twice, the 2 times they played my team. Now I got to do some homework and find out what they're about. Oh my goodness, they got 60 wins? That's a nice even number. That's an integer of 10. Okay, that sounds about right. 60 wins is a big deal. I'm going to give it to them. Just like we made a big deal when they got 50 for the first time. As if 59 and 60 are that different. They're not. But in the perception of voters, with a little information, it matters. So I do think he's going to lose some votes. I don't think he should, but I think he will.
So congratulations to the Toronto Raptors. You got 59 wins. You lost your 6th man tonight. You're playing the Washington Wizards in the first round and the Cleveland Cavaliers in the second round.
We should say, though, if today is April 11th, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we were having the conversation October 11th,
yeah,
and the Raptors had 59 wins and their number 1 overall seed,
and you told me Fred VanVleet was hurt without any context.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. And we would say Dwayne Casey is in any sort of conversation of Coach of the Year.
It's a great season.
We'd be doing backflips. That would be a great season.
Yeah.
So even though it ends on a sour note in South Beach, go to live, turn up, come back rested. And
I don't think they're turning up. They got that flight. Just a last couple things. We got to run. But yeah, Justin John tweeted in, clearly Casey doesn't trust the Stars to turn the switch on based on their Game 1 starts, and I don't blame him. Go check Casey's strategy the last 2 seasons in Game 82. How'd that work out? Again, I don't think that has really any bearing on anything. I just think that you should be able to expect this team to turn the switch on in Game 1. And I guess, you know what? If it does work out and the Raptors come out and they win Game 1 of this series and it all turns out hunky-dory, then yeah, I guess who cares? Like, we'll be looking back at this and saying, like, yeah, it doesn't really matter. But for me, that was still an odd choice for Dwayne Casey tonight, who's going to probably finish in the top 3 for Coach of the Year and not finish with it. We got to run. We're going to be back, obviously, every single game of the playoffs. We're going to be right here. We hope that you join us. We hope that the audience grows. We'll always take your tweets, hashtag SNRaps. We're hoping to take more phone calls, hopefully be on the radio. Thanks to everybody that produces this show. We'll catch you. I'm going to predict Saturday afternoon. This is Raptors Postgame on Sportsnet.ca.